Hello everyone and welcome to my oil painting class. And today we're painting water pools of Dovestone Reservoir. We've got lovely stream coming in. We've got beautiful pools of water settling in. Some of it's moving, some of it's staying still. We've got this lovely valley here. And what I'd like to focus on today is how we can paint the waterfall. How do we define the shape so it doesn't quite get lost? Now, the tricky part today, we have loads of details on our piece, on our photograph. So the key thing today, as well as to help our waterfall to stand out, is how do we define the shapes? Last week we looked at tone, shapes of tone. This week we're going to look at overall shapes of color. So I'm using orange background today because painting, we've got our colors out. I'll talk through them in a moment. So painting on the orange background, the reason for it, we've got quite a lot of greens and browns and kind of loads of earthy colors. So orange will be a lovely undercoat for it to come through our layers of paint. I also have a little sample piece here where I want to plan my blocks of color, okay? And perhaps do some color mixing here as well. You can just watch me doing that, or if you want to paint along, you can paint on a blank paper as well. But again, the orange will give us that bit more of a transition of how it's going to appear now on our painting. Right, so first I'm going to start right, so my paints are right, before I forget, before I get going. So I have paints gray, I've got cool colors, white and some warm colors. So my cool colors are ultramarine, cerulean, I could use cobalt blue, emerald green, or any other green today will be fine. Warmer greens will be fine, especially like hooker's green. Okay, so I've got my white, titanium white or zinc white, whichever you're using. Cadmium yellow, ochre, cadmium red, or you could also have cadmium orange, whichever you might again have. Magenta or ruby or anything pink looking, okay, and some violet. The darker you can get the violet, the better as well. Easier to mix a darker color rather than sometimes you can get a paler violet, which is harder to get the darkness from. Right, so what I'd like to do, I'm going to use my small brush and some violet, make my paint a little bit runny, so I can sketch my first composition, my planning, my initial planning for my sketch here. Now this is my border. If I'll just make it a tiny bit more darker so we can actually see approximate border here for my picture. Right, so I have overall a few darknesses here. We can identify the sky is the most lightest area, so it's probably some of the areas of our waterfall, okay? Everything else is looking quite mixed, okay? We have lighter rocks, very dark rocks. We've got medium darkness, we've got lighter tones, we've got everything is really mixed up, okay? So if I were to squint my eyes really quite hard, okay, or step away, I will see some extra darker tones, probably here, where the base, one of the walls of my waterfall, yes, so where it starts dropping down here, okay, and some of the darker, deeper sections of shadows here from the rocks, maybe a little bit more of a vertical wall here at the back of the waterfall, possibly this section part of the mountain as well. Everything else more or less stays the same. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to divide my picture into 3 darknesses first. Sky, everything else, and these areas I've just described. Very simple ways. So my sky, let's find a silhouette for it. Got a lovely V shape here. Might just make it less perfect than it is on the photograph. It's a little bit off center, that pointy, the most deep part of that valley. Okay, and it's not actually quite as deep as I've done it. So if I'll have a look at the edge of my photograph on the side, it's quite a shallow end. So this part is way bigger than this one. So my halfway through of the picture is about somewhere here. So if I divide my picture into half, so my V shape should be starting somewhere here. Sorry, that's not my V shape, that's where it's finishing, sorry. This is what I'm looking for. Where's my tissue? This bit. Okay, so this is approximately halfway through. About here, so about here should be finishing off. That's fine. And where it's gonna go back up, I quite like bringing it from the top line of our painting. Okay, maybe a little flatter, a little steeper, so it's got more variety going on. Okay, good. Now, how do we identify our darker tones? I'm going to find that vertical part of the wall of that rock where the water is falling. Okay, so it's below my halfway through point. So this is my halfway through point. So it needs to be below it somewhere here. Okay, and I'm going to turn it to a very simple shape. Okay, like a narrow rectangle. Okay, that's something even continues somewhere here. I just want to keep it simple for now. Okay. And we have a little vertical somewhere at the back here. So the valley will collect all the water, and that's where it will be coming from. So steps of the waterfall will be coming from that direction, approximately somewhere here. Okay, that already gives us an idea of what's going to happen to how we're going to define our waterfall. This is probably the sides of the pools are going a little bit more round here. So these shadows, so it's not perfect rectangles, but that will be enough for us to identify them as a drop. Okay, and there are some rocks on the side here. You can identify some of those darker shadows, perhaps somewhere here. Can even make it slightly darker altogether, just for us to see as they are. Okay, and we said possibly this part of the valley, sorry, this part of the hill, peak, rock face. Okay, somewhere there. And I might stop at that for the moment. What I'd like to do next is to start planning my overall, sorry, so I'm going to paint my sky a little bit lighter, but at the same time, I'm going to start planning the colors for it. So my medium darkness so far is remaining my as my orange. My darker tones, it's what I've just colored in. Sorry, this is just a wide line, meant to be just a thinner line. When this is a little bit of a shape. So I can paint a little bit of sky to make the tones working for me here. And at the same time, I'm going to plan my colors. So I'm going to start with a little bit of white and some ultramarine. Now, on my photograph, we have the sky almost blank. There is a little bit of a blob of blue, but because we were in that valley, the hills were actually quite closing in on us. So we were more in a shadow. So the camera would pick all the bright colors of the environment next to us, or it will pick up lovely sky and everything else will be black, almost shapes. So that's why my sky in the photograph looks a bit boring, just blank. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to mix my blue ultramarine with some white, and I'm going to make it not the most lightest, not the most darkest. I'm not going to include any whites for the clouds, which we're probably going to have a think about. But I'm just going to do something in between. Something not too light, not too dark, something in between. But that will be my lightest tone for my sketch. I'm going to find overall lights and darks and overall colors at the same time. My paint is a little bit transparent, more than I wanted, so I'm just going to mix more and maybe use less tips to keep it a little bit more bolder. Okay. Okay. Now what I'm going to do here, I'm going to put a little mark of this color on the side, and I will start thinking about future colors which could be part of my sky. So for example, I can mix for my actual painting slightly darker version of my ultramarine. Okay, doesn't have to be much darker, but slightly darker. Okay. Okay, it doesn't quite show as much on the screen. Hold on. Okay, so I have got a little bit of that ultramarine, although on the screen it doesn't quite look like ultramarine. But I can also mix my cerulean blue with a bit of white. Okay, and that could be my other option, blue. I'm just going to put a little cluster of possible colors together without any particular order to them. Okay, it's more of a varieties. And also I can use some fresher white. Okay, so that will be my colors for the sky. Right, on the bigger picture. Right, next. Our dark tones will be quite straightforward. I'm going to mix a range of darks. I'm going to use a little bit of black, quite runny, and I can mix it with my magenta or your pink red. You can even mix it with a bit of cadmium red. We'll have a lovely reddish black, almost like a brownish black, lovely quality of it. If I were to dilute it with some water, with some tips, I will have a little more of that browny color in there. Okay, so that could be our overall color. I'm going to place it here for now. So let's block that one in for my rocks. Now, loads of shadows of this darkness will have different colors, same like my sky, what I was mixing here. But For now, I'm just going to simplify them within the same color. Okay. However, the darkness for the mountain, I'm going to straight away mix a different black or different dark. Just going to wipe my brush here. And I'm going to go for a bit of black and some ultramarine. Now, that's my Payne's Grey, so it's already got a little bit of blue in it. And adding some ultramarine. Okay, if you use it slightly diluted, you will see the color through. Okay, you will see a little bit of paler blue there. If you have quite thick paint, you can use a little bit of white just to make it less solid black type of dark shape. Okay, and of course my rocks will also have some cooler colors, and there will be more variety of black we can mix. We can mix black and a bit of violet. We can use more solid paint from just the black, from the black and blues. We can use black and green. So all these ranges of colors could come in here as well. I'm just going to mix a little bit of black and emerald green here. Okay. So that will be my range of blacks. And what you also might notice that it might be harder on the screen again. I've got a solid opaque color. I've got a little bit transparent colors, so that's make my black lighter. I added a little bit of white to this black and green. So I've got subtones, like for the sky, subtones of light, subtones of darks, but also of different colors. Okay. Gonna wash my brush. And now we come into exciting part of midtones. Now we have quite a lot of midtones, and they will be all having, again, similar darkness, but more variety of color. Because we have quite a lot of area for midtones, I'm going to separate them into some greens. We can see part of the bank here is green. We can see a slightly different green and rocks. On this side, we've got a slightly different green in here. So I'm just going to group them into the green area first. So can we do that with our color straight away? I'm going to go for a little bit of white. Something in between all of these greens, something warm green will be fine. I'm going to go for emerald green. Okay. And this should be not as light as my sky. Okay, this is quite light actually, so maybe a little bit darker. And not as dark as my shadows. Yeah, something like this will do. And so let's look for where these big blocks of green are going to be. Approximately. Okay, somewhere coming here. This opportunity of placing green now, I can start seeing this awkward orange shape in between. Not too sure if I like that shape. So that's when we start thinking what more pleasant shape we can create to make the picture a bit more interesting. Maybe I'll have to trim my shadow. Maybe my dark shape might need to take a change. So the three shapes, the green, the whatever that color is going to be, and that dark will work together. Okay, so I'm looking at loads of things simultaneously. Right, the green on this side, somewhere here. Okay, I'm trying to really simplify it. I'm trying to Forget about all the details and the loads of indents of beautiful rocks for now. Okay, you can see a little bit of that shadow here. And actually maybe that shadow will be a little bit more tamed. Okay, so all of this will come somewhere here. It makes me think and see things better the moment I start putting it on a smaller painting sketch. Okay, good. A little patch of green somewhere there. Don't need it there, is it important? Maybe for now I'll put it there and see what's going to happen. Okay, and a little more of the green at the front. We see these lovely plants. Okay. Do I want to put this big plant bush right in the center? I've decided to move it a little more towards the left. Again, this is my opportunity to make those compositional decisions. Is it going to be in the center? I'm looking at that shape as a unit, yeah, against other shapes around us. Okay. And within this green, we can mix loads of others when we start painting on a large scale. Can we make more ochre-like green? Okay, a lighter version of it. Can we have more stronger green present? Okay, can we have a little more yellow within our green? Okay. So again, this is my group of possible options of what I can mix later. Can I make this yellowish green slightly lighter? So a bit of white. Okay, got quite sunny green here. Can I mix the same green with a little bit of cadmium red? Okay, that's quite a nice color as well. Okay, and of course there will be some rocks in between those areas. So far I'm just approaching it from the green's point of view. But overall, most of my greens will be darker. That's why I painted them slightly darker. There will be some highlights, but not as many. Okay. Right, for the other medium darkness, I'm going to look for, it's going to be some rocks. Now we have really light areas of rocks. Okay, that's probably some of these ones. There might be coming into the category of light, but I think if we start putting them too light, they will start clashing with our sky and the water. So I think if we'll keep them into a lighter version of the medium overall darknesses, okay? So I'm gonna go for those lighter rocks. And also if we look at the water here, kind of a flat, wet rock with a little bit of sediment, and it's quite a darker browny color. So that's more of a darker version of our medium darkness, yeah? What I should have done, I should have done it like this, where this is my light, okay? This is my darks. Okay, and all of these ones going to be medium tones. And these are going to be not just greens, there'll be some browns, there'll be some rocks, but I'll group them up. So we have a lighter version of it. So the greens probably will be full range of medium tones, from lighter to medium to darks. Same as the stones. And so is possibly the backs of the mountains. So maybe we'll have 3 colors identified now for the rest of the view. So lighter rocks, let's start with them. A little bit of white, bit of ochre. Okay. And just to make it slightly darker and more rock-like looking, I'm going to add a bit of violet to that. Okay. So that will be quite a good lighter version tone of my rocks. Can have a hint more ochre in that, or a hint more violet in that. Okay, and I think I'll paint it this final tone a little bit darker than I started mixing. So as for the formula little sketch, so some of these rocks going to be here behind the tree. Okay, a little bit behind the tree somewhere here. And perhaps in a couple of areas here. And there's something else on the side here as well. Okay, so I'm getting more into details with my medium tones, but I'm still very much simplifying them, yeah? Could put a little bit of light next to these darker shadows, but I don't know if I'll see them much because my green is very close to them now. Okay, maybe somewhere there. Again, very much simplified, not looking into particulars, not looking into details, just planning overall locations of colors. Okay, now let's have a look at the darker tones. For example, those pools of water where we can see the rocks more. I'm going to use similar color what I just had, that violet and white and ochre. Just going to add more violet to it and perhaps more of the reds. One of the other reds, or cadmium red or magenta, will be both fine. But they will be less darker than my shadows. Okay, so somewhere there, looking quite pinky. Okay, that's a bit better. Okay, getting all of that blocked. Okay, you'll be saying, where's our waterfall? We lost our waterfall. We'll find it back once we get the rest of them shapes in. Right, any of this more rocky color? No, I think we're good. But again, we can vary this color. We can make it more into the darker violet-y version, a bit more extra red from cadmium red or from magenta. Okay, can use a little more extra ochre in there as well. Okay. And the backdrop of the hill, we see something there with probably similar purpley colors of the heather, a little bit of paler grays maybe as well, maybe a bit of cooler grays, maybe cooler bit of blue going in. So I think if I were to pick up as a, again, start my white, some violet. Okay, tiny bit more white. and perhaps ultramarine. Also, we're seeing things in the distance, so there will be less into the red. There will be more tend to be towards blues. Okay. That's quite good. Looks quite strong blue there, actually, but it looks just right for me. On my palette, sorry, can't quite see my palette. It's reflecting. Okay, so I think I can do with a tiny hint of white and a tiny hint of black to make it just a bit more grayish, blue grayish, violet grayish. Okay, version of it, so it's more of that hint of color. Yeah, it doesn't quite show it right on here yet. I will photograph it for you. Usually on the photograph it comes out better. So it's grayish, not so bold blue as it shows here. But we're gonna get this area somewhere here. Okay, most importantly, you can see how well it fits as a darkness, yeah? As my medium darker tone, it fits, it's a medium tone, sorry. It fits really well. It's not as light as the sky. It's not as dark as the shadows. Okay, so that fits well. And even if I were to go for bolder blue, which I haven't, would have been quite interesting to explore it as a color option there as well. Okay, that's quite nice. Now, looking at my shapes, is there anything I might want to change when I start painting here? I don't quite like the long shape of the mountain of a shadow. So I think I'm going to adjust that. So I'll get my blue and black, or what did I have there? Yes, blue and black. Okay, and I'm going to put it a little bit out here. I'm painting over the sky, which has already got a bit of white, so it might come out less dark. So I'm gonna change it to probably something here. Okay, that's looking a better shape rather than a wormy looking one. And also I'm interested to change those two shapes a little bit too similar, at least how they come out. So that was a little bit of red and black. So I'm going to amend those shapes. So without doing this composition, I'll be just blindly copying things. With putting things together, I can start identifying overall sizes, overall distribution of color. Okay, maybe something like this. There might be something else of darkness coming in. Yes, I'm giving myself some credit ahead for these shapes not going to remain as perfect blocks. There will be some extra details for varieties of these shapes as well. But for now, they'll be fine. There, right. And finally, I need to put a little bit of water. Right, for this, I'm going to use, so that's, I'm back to my whites. I'm going to use some thick white. So without any terps or anything, just going to pick up some thick white. And I'm just going to place it strategically. I'm not interested in if it's going to come out perfectly or not. I'm just going to put something over my darks, a little mark and a little mark. Okay, so there will be some water going there. There will be some water going that way, horizontal way, where it's flatter pools. Something's going to go up. There might be something going down here. And then it breaks down again into the into that vertical wall of how many little shapes. Okay, gonna unite together at the base. Right, my brush is filling up with loads of muck from the initial painting here, and there will be something else coming here. This will be quite nice for me to paint it with within a scale rather than playing with the very small marks. Now, I've just copied overall whites I can see on the photo. Maybe in some rapids here as well, there will be some whites. Little steps, flatter steps. Okay, a little bit of white water somewhere here. And like what we've done with our shadows, I'm going to look at my shapes of white. I'm not too happy with them. They're a bit too similar, yeah? It's almost like two marks together, little triangles together, yeah? So can I make my waterfall a little bit different? I think if I'll keep the back as it is, if I'll keep this one as it is, if we would have had a tiny bit more rain, I'm sure most of this area would be covered with water as well. Okay, and I'm placing my white, it's not quite placing, so I'm actually going to lift this mucky white and create myself an area where I can introduce some fresh white again. So all of this area I'm going to make my new white for my waterfall. And this is what this little sketch is about. Okay, all the rest will become little nuances of how we're going to do it. So I'm interested in making these whites stronger than what they are here. Okay. Perhaps some of my marks are a little bit too big. I can tweak that later. A little bit awkward altogether on this scale, but I'm much happier to go on the bigger scale considering those new options. Okay, might make this one a little bit more. Yeah, I can tweak that one easier on a larger scale. So we have broken down into our light, darks, and medium tones. I should have put my darks on the side logically, but I wanted to play something, yeah, with direct contrast. And we now also divided our medium tones into greens, into lighter browns, into darker browns, into some cooler gray blues as well. And as we paint it, we can consider working within extra details as we go. Doing this little plan allows me now to improve my composition and already start painting area by area, mixing the range of colors we planned. Okay, so let's give it a go. So I'm going to start now on my sketch with a brush. So again, I'm still using tabs, so it just dries a little bit quicker for me to start applying my oils after. So we'll again come back to my violet, a runny violet, and let's have a look what we'll start sketching first. That V shape of the sky has amended its shape for me. So now it's going to start from the top of my painting, but I'm going to still consider how deep it's going to be. Remember we said if this is halfway through my picture, the deepest point is just a little bit higher, okay? And where is it in comparison to the width of the picture. Again, this is halfway through. It's almost not quite a quarter. Okay, this is my halfway through my painting. Not quite the quarter, but a little bit less. Okay, so somewhere here, that's okay. So let's find this shape. Looks like we're quite okay. Feel free to experiment with your own version of the valley silhouette. Yeah, you might end up with something very exciting too of your own design. Okay, so I'm actually now looking at my plan. I will look at my photograph as well, but if there's something I like about my plan, I will stay with that. I quite like this elongated shape here. Gives me quite a nice, more closed in sense of space. Okay, I think this one just needs a little bit of clarity, a bit more ziggy-zagging here. So that's more stronger line. That's one a bit more lower, and that's one that's going to be somewhere there. Okay. So making our mountains a little bit higher exaggerates the expression of it, makes it quite exciting. Okay. Right, what did we do next? We found these darker shapes of the waterfall's vertical walls. So one is close to that V shape, it's just a little bit perhaps off its side. It's not quite right underneath of it, or somewhere there. I'm going to keep it as simple as we've done on our sketch and our plan, and then I'll tweak it. So let's just stay with that first, then we can see the overall proportions and overall shapes if they need changing. Right, and then I need to find this lawn shape as well. Just almost going to the sides of the painting. Okay, I'm going to keep it straightish first. Okay. And next, I'm going to find my color shapes. So if I've got my darkness, can I find the medium darkness of that violety gray next to it? Okay, where that's going to be approximately. Where the overall darker gray blue is going to be this side, where it's meeting the green. Okay, maybe somewhere there. Right, where my darker shapes of the shadows from the rocks are going to be. So they're kind of bordering perhaps with this area, or maybe actually on my scale, looking at the photograph, they're not. Might just go a little bit lower. Okay. So I can start seeing more information from my photograph, which will be more interesting. Okay, so that will be all perhaps some of those rocks. They're all broken down into sub areas after sub segments there. And there is another one somewhere here. Could make it even tiny bit darker straight away, so I don't get lost within my lines. Okay, something's happening there. All right. And let's find the rocks here at the front and the tree at the front as well. So how big that rock is, it's almost in line with this group of rocks almost in line with this box of the waterfall. Okay, so big group of rocks. Okay, I'm looking for that shape. I'm partially ignoring the tree for the moment. I'll come back to that shortly. So all of this area is becoming, okay, light. And then the tree will have a big group. There's one shape of it here. And that tree is going to be covering shapes of the rocks as well. Okay, something approximately here. Good. Almost there. Now I'm going to start picking up a tiny bit more darker violet. I use deliberately lighter violet for the central area of the shadows because I know I want to define it a bit more. But what I can define next, and it's a little bit easier, those shapes of green. So we can see a more simplified line of the green. Okay. And also it will be bordering with my darks here, so that's where I can start defining a little more of those shadows. There will be some more stone exposed. Okay. And on the other side, that's bordering where you've got the line for the greens. But for the lower part, let's find it somewhere here. Got a lovely small group of rocks. Sometimes offsetting shadows is easier to be done with just painting a little bit of darkness straight away rather than doing an outline silhouette. Okay, and I'm just going to double check I have got enough space here. Yes, that's going to be the base of my water, so that the darker shape. Let's have a look at that. A lovely wall, so it's not quite straight. Let's have a look how it's changing its form. A little lower, a little step higher. The trick here, because we'll be painting a lot of white, I don't want to cover it too much. So I'm going to still work in a lot of suggestive marks, but I'm not going to paint everything through here. I will find this ledge a little bit higher, a little higher here, a little lower there, a little rock coming out, and I think, okay, maybe a little too far. Okay, I can see where how it's connects to these now. Right, connects between that part and this one, so somewhere here. Okay, and then the water's going over. There's more things within this area. Okay, maybe just a little lower. Don't be scared if you wiping anything off your board or your canvas and it doesn't wipe clean, as long as it is not thick paint. I can see a little bit of color on, but it's not going to be a problem. If I have a lot of thick paint and I want to paint off, and I'm trying to lift it off, sorry, paint over that thick layer, that will be a problem. But lifting some of it will do the job. Okay, that's okay. And for the back box, let's find a little more dynamic shape for it as well. I think there is a bit of a slope. Okay, a bit of a slope here. So then the water could come this way and the water could come that way. So that's the areas which I can partially wipe. They might be a little crude or not looking quite nice. Okay, but they will start serving the purpose. Okay, so from that box, this is what's going to happen here. I'm going to connect to the sides for the darkness. There's another some sort of darker block. I might simplify it to some of the darkness, and there will be some streaks of gray and white in the middle. Okay, what I ended up with a little monster. I've got 2 eyes and a mouth. So they're gonna be annoying me, so I'll have to move that about. And also by the time I actually paint the water, they no longer will be the eyes and the mouth. Okay, but I will move that other shape slightly. Okay, so that will be my water coming in. So I might plan a little bit of white water for the lower step as well. By putting some vertical lines and offsetting some initial blocks of white. Okay, so that's going to be here. Now in the middle here, I just put loads. So I'm just going to leave all that space out. But where I might finish it, maybe somewhere here. This is going to be a bit more darker. Okay. Maybe a little break within the waterfall. And then again, some breaks. I'm painting the rock and leaving the spaces for my water. So I'm just having a little play of a plan. Okay, with possible gaps left. If we were to paint in watercolors or acrylics, we can leave shapes out much more easily, or in acrylics we can just repaint shapes over. With oils we can, but we can't at the same time, especially such a fresh color. It will just be spoiled, so I need to make sure I have that path ready and keep it clear. Again, it's going to be a little bit more white somewhere here. And then that darker rock will remain there. Okay, and there will be some extra darks coming over. Okay, that's good, that's good. And then any other small rocks we find in, if they're key components to you, leave them out, or we can paint them as we go. As we'll start introducing shapes, I think I'll do that. I'll do a little plan of some steps within the shallow water here of the pools. Okay, that's might be quite enough of the layers and how the water is dashing. And I just put a little bit of that direction. Okay, of the water. Okay, so that was hard. The first stage of planning and applying, kind of identifying those shapes within our painting. The rest should be much easier. Okay, just double checking I've got everything here in place. Yeah, I think all is good. I think I've gained more sky, the width of the sky somehow. Maybe I can make my mountains a little higher. Maybe I can make this line slightly higher. But if you want to keep it the way you've got it, that's all fine as well. I think that's maybe just a little bit less of the sky, more of the drama of the peaks at the back. Okay, in proportion of things, then the white then is not dominating the landscape. That's where that leads. I think that will be nice. And then that line could go slightly more. Okay, so once it's planned, that will be the rest. If not quite painting by numbers, very close to it because we've done all the hard work. Right, and now we've got our plan. We've got our layout of our plan. We enlarged it. Let's get on with painting. So my sky might be first. So I've got my range of blues. Let's get a bigger brush. Okay, I'm going to put some oil on it. And let's load the brush with some white. I think I might need a little more oil for this larger scale brush. Okay. And I'm going to block the whole area with a range of blues, starting from darker blues at the top, but they still need to remain overall paler. Yeah. Now remember, my photograph wasn't very successful, so we are painting our own sky. So overall, the top blue is going to be slightly darker, but not overly dark. I'm going to put a few darker strokes. And then, oops, I'm just going to make sure it comes out more evenly here. A bit transparent, so I need more white. And now I'm going to start adding some cerulean blue. Okay. Which could come out dark as well. Doesn't have to be very light. But then lower. Okay, I'm going to start adding paler blue, maybe a little bit more here on the side. Okay, I can blend those colors. If there is a little bit of transparency so we can see the orange background, that would be marvelous. Okay, I'm going to place slightly more stronger off-white color next to the border with my mountains, just to see if that's the right type of light. I can make it even lighter later, but for now, let's keep it there. So I'm blocking. I'm going to start thinking about other elements within the sky as possible. Clouds with a little bit of blending. So let me see if I need to lift it up a bit more. Yeah, right, hold on. Right, so I just blocked my sky, and I actually ended up with an interesting shaped cloud here that's coming out from behind the hill. I might just persuade it to be a little bit more less perfect. So I'm just creating my own little environment there. Maybe lift some of the stronger blue from my brush, get some more fresh white. and apply a little more stronger color. Now my big brush, I had to take the paint from it rather than loading it with lighter color because there's quite a lot of paint on the surface, and it will start, if I don't kind of clean my brush, it will just keep on making more oily mess rather than actually applying the color or mixing the color. Well, this is something interesting. Okay, maybe something's going in there. Any variations of sky, any playful, if you want to use a bit of cloth, I will be using the cloth later on. If we want to put a bit more fresher whites, if you're not too sure where yet, maybe leave it for now. I just put a little bit of fresher whites on top. Against the orange background, it looks a little strange so far, but it will come and settle down after. Okay, so I can clean my brush. Okay, now because we have a plan, we can move not from the lightest and the darkest tones. I have got some of the darkest tones, but I want to work with my colors, so I just used a bit of blue. Can I work into the mountain shapes and have some of that lovely grayish, blue, grayish, purple color? Okay, so I'll need a little bit of white. Got some violet and some ultramarine. Again, I can look at my color plan and remind myself what it was. Okay, a little bit of black, and that's when I knew I need to have slightly more white so it's not too dark. Okay, and let's test it against the painting. Good. And what I've done as well, my paint is not as thick as some of these clouds. It's a little bit more runnier, so I can apply, look how transparent that becomes. Okay, I could have a little bit of range of qualities of that density of the paint. Okay, a little bit of runniness, maybe on the lower part here of the mountain. I want to see some of that orange come through. Maybe I want to see a little bit of that somewhere else here. Okay, and then I want to mix this color much more solid, more opaque. So then I'll have less oil, more paints. Okay, I can still use oil, but maybe not in a runny state of it. And that the quantity of white will be bigger, so then it stays opaque. Okay, maybe a hint more. If you go a little bit more towards the blue, towards the violet, whichever color you end up as you mix, use them all. Use that range. So far here I've got two. I don't know if this is the same. Little paler. Okay, so use all the full range of colors as you mix them. Will be marvelous if you can apply them all. Okay, I think my sky might need to go a little bit lower here perhaps, or this point will be a little too high. Okay, this is quite exciting. More solid paint coming in. Okay, let me find my ridge as well. Might have just gently lost its silhouette. So let's have a look. Here, maybe bring it a little forward. Somewhere here. That one is here. Okay, and if we're painting and we're seeing the strokes with now a softer, runnier layer, use those strokes to create maybe a little texture of the valley. There will be some stone slopes, there will be little directions, there will be little hints of light and dark. I can use my cloth to lift some paint as well, and maybe reintroduce paler layers, or use a, okay, finger maybe lifts too much. Maybe if I just gently do it with a cloth. Quite like some of that orange coming through. It looks unfinished with the orange now because we have a lot of orange around. But once we have other colors blocking most of that background color, that will look lovely. Okay. We can also look for lost and found line borders for our mountain. I've got quite defined lines, so what I might do, I might use a cloth and just go on the border. Okay, that's just lifted things off. This is not what I wanted. I wanted to smudge it, so let's bring a little bit more of that paler color. I wanted to have less defined shape, but actually I wanted to deepen my white below. Okay. So let's just partially, that's better. Let's partially soften that ridge. So you've got a little bit of a hint of mist in the distance. Less perfect. Okay, maybe a little bit of a distant mist. So that line is not just all solid. Okay, that's a bit better. Just need to be, I think, because it's not huge amount of paint, a lot of thinner layers here. Okay, that's better. So that light is just beautifully soft. Can bring a small amount of paler color through. Okay, that's good. And touching up paint with soft cloth is wonderful. Sometimes the brush struggles with the volume, kind of with viscosity of our oils, with different oil qualities as with paint, as liquid itself. That's where the cloth comes in nicely. I'm also picking up a bit of that paler sky color. I think I might bring some of that into my valley here as well. So almost as if I'm adding a hint of light here. So doing a little bit of improvisation within my range of those grays, gray violets. Okay, so then my orange is not so solid. There's a little bit of it there, but not so solid. Okay, something exciting there. If I'm not too sure, maybe some of it is a little bit too big, I can always take some of it off and place stronger darkness back. Okay, a little bit of that back. that suggestiveness of the mountains are going to be there. Right. Now I've done my medium mountains, medium darkness mountains. Gonna do a very dark shape mountains. So we had a contrast of indigo, sorry, well, it could be an indigo. I can mix my own indigo, a bit of black and ultramarine there. And again, quite runny in paint. Okay. Looks a little more solid, so if I'll add more of my oils, it becomes more stronger there. And I'm trying to make sure that we see the orange through it. So the texture of my strokes and the direction of my strokes will give a little bit of the form to that distant cliff. Okay, some more there. I'm also quite happy that it's kind of blends with, not blends, but it's borders nicely together with my cooler mountains there. So it's darker, but it's not solid black. So that's a beauty of it, right? Any other changes of strokes? So am I happy with that? I think I'll leave it like that for the moment. Okay, good. Can I add a darker stroke to one of these shapes? This looks like a slightly darker shape. Maybe there's some group of darker rocks. So we can do that. Okay, maybe just reintroduce this color into that violet again against the lovely orange. It might give some extra quality. So again, I'm adding to that range of things. Okay, good. Next, let's block our greens and let's block our rocks. I think if we block our rocks first, then we can surround it with our greens. So let's work perhaps into both, if not simultaneously, kind of parallel to each other. Right, so rocks and greens. Let's start with the rocks. I have wiped my brush but not cleaned it because I'm going to be mixing similar colors with ochre. So I've got my grays there already. I've got a little bit of violet on my brush from the previous shape of color. So I'm going to add a bit more ochre to that, a little more extra white. So I'm aiming for some of these lighter rocks. Okay. First, so I can block them quite quickly. And I'm probably going to use cloth for my greens. So one big shape. Okay. This time my paint is reasonably thick because I want to apply it quite quickly. Okay, and the rocks don't have huge amount of texture, so we still see a little bit of orange coming through, but not big volume. I also want to make this color slightly lighter and make it sing a bit more. So if I add more of that fresher ochre with white, I'll have a lighter version of this color as well. Okay, so I might have a little areas of bolder light within our mediums. Yeah, it's coming, just dipping into that slightly lighter version. Okay, I can see some flat rocks over by the waterfall, and they are the flat areas by the water pools. Okay, now this area as well, and it's behind the tree or the plant, so I'm just going to paint it a little bit further into the plant, just a little further, so it's not on its own when I start painting it. Okay, can I change slightly the color? Can I add a hint of or pink or cadmium red to that? Okay, still want to keep it pale, so maybe this rock will stay. Don't look overly light yet because they're surrounded by the background color. Right, any other paler shapes or any other paler strokes within this area? Right, there's some lighter rocks here. Rocks are quite exciting to paint. Once we partially sketch them, I can place a stroke within the darker lines, and it almost creates extra shadows for it. Okay, just need a bit more white here. Right, any other lighter rocks? Something looks like here. Need to make sure it's not just whitish, so otherwise it's going to be clashing with my waterfall, but something into ochre. Okay, good. Anything else? Okay, I think there are other sections where there will be some more light within the rocks. I'm going to turn them over grays, gray rather than ochre browns. That's okay. That's okay. That's good. Right, let's find some darker tones for them, for the shadows, or kind of subtones. I'm going to go for a little bit more of the violet, and I think last time I used a bit of magenta. Let's find all of these areas. Okay. I think this rock ended up being a little bigger than I wanted. Okay, so then I can see better here. Can I put a tiny bit of cadmium red into that? Slightly changing that variety of color. Okay, it's a little bit clashing with my current shadows, but I haven't quite painted those shadows properly yet. Okay, good. Okay, might just leave a little bit of space where possible streaks of white could go, of when the water will be dashing down. Okay, how about adding a little bit more violet and mixing it together? Right, I've left this area without much of a shadow. Let's have perhaps another variety of a color, adding to this a hint of ultramarine. It just pushes it further towards the violet, or that ultramarine becomes a little bit more of a grayish color within that shadow of a rock. Any variations will be lovely. Okay. We've got some stronger shadows here as well. I'll start slowly adding them as well by using some violet and ultramarine, maybe some blacks later. I'll use black sparingly, mainly mixing it with other colors. Okay, never just painting a solid whole of a black. Okay, that's quite a dark shadow actually. I wanted more of a change of direction than change of color. Okay, back to where we want it to be. Okay, good. So the tree is going to be here. That's all good. It's going to be a bit of a block of them. Right. Any other rocks? Lighter, darker ones, or anything in between? Well, let's put something in between here. Let's put something on top or over part of the green. Right, let's have a look at these ones. Big stroke with a big brush. Okay, another hint of pink for some extra shadows. Okay, good, good, good. Right, and there's a little bit more. These ones continue, so there might be some more stones within that kind of range of height, whatever that's happening there within the valley. Okay, so that's how this all will end up with a darker shapes. Okay, that's good. Now, while we're on the darker medium tones, let's find some extra shadows and then the greens will come in. I'm gonna go for lovely black and violet, black and blue, black and red, slightly on the runnier side as well, but I need to make sure it will stand out darker, and if it's runnier I need to make sure we still see some of our orange background. Without it we're going to struggle to show air in our painting. Everything will end up being a black hole. So keep it partially transparent, even if you can't see it in some places on my screen. Those spaces are going to be there. Okay, so that's good. That extra darker shadow there. Now pressing that runny paint against thicker layers, and some of the thinner layers gives me a wonderful quality of strokes. So much pleasure on kind of creating them. Can do more of the placements. Right, so let's change the color a little bit. Let's go for a little bit of red within my black. Okay, I think that's red. Actually, we'll go closer here for some of the that lovely coppery sediment of the within the water. Okay, how that little step within the rocks. There's another rock protruding. Maybe little shadows from these U shapes, just a little suggestions for them. Okay, maybe something a little bit more here together. Right, how about adding more blue? So I'm going for my ultramarine. And let's find some of those next to water. They might have a stronger connection to that coolness, that contrast. Okay, within the banks. So we're going to have an orange waterfall before we add white. Okay, any other lines, kind of those lovely flat rocks in here. We're creating that surface. I'm trying to simplify it. I can't copy it all of the shapes within the photograph. I have to pick up some and leave others, and just look at my painting and see what works. So please do the same. Just see what will appeal more, or how it starts developing on the picture. As long as we're ranging the color, ranging the size of the shapes. Okay, anything else? Maybe this one could be a little bit bigger. And I'll have to play with it when the water will be introduced as well. So I'm trying to preserve bigger shapes of white for the water we're gonna make. Yeah, and I'm trying to offset it with some extra shadows. I'm not painting everything. Remember when we planned it as a sketch? And I just introduced the first violet on orange surface. So I'm not painting all of those areas with my darks. I'm leaving a little bit of subtone. Yes, so remember we were talking about some tiny bit lighter still preserved. Okay, and I can play with more and more and more and find more and more details. So I've broken it down to loads of things. I'll need to unite it with my grasses and kind of border it with my grasses, and then unite it with some whites going around. So it's all still to come, right? Tiny bit more darkness, maybe somewhere here, and something just smudging, suggestion of more of a transparent, less transparent shadow of the rock. So let's perfect darkness there, perhaps. More of a suggestion, right? Anything else? I think this part of the orange could disappear. All right, what's this shape? Okay, that might be enough for now. Now, let's start using now the cloth and something we can scratch the surface with for our greens, and also for getting some extra details as we'll be developing our medium darks. So for the cloth, I'm just going to go for a little bit. I'm going to load it as I do with a brush, but I'm going to go for my greens. So a bit of oil. some white. Okay, sometimes it's easier to mix it with a brush, so don't feel obliged to mix it with a cloth. I think I might be quicker for me to do that. Now my brush still got loads of browns, but I'm going to mix emerald green with ochres, and that violet color will be very welcome anyway, so that's better already. Just going to pre-mix a good volume of paint as well, and a slight range of it, so slightly darker green. Okay, maybe more red with that. Okay, an ochre. So we'll have more browny greens, more grassy fresh greens. Okay, let's start with those two greens first for me. Well, I've got it on a brush. I'm gonna have a big block. Okay, that's quite dark. I need it lighter. I need it much lighter, so that's good that I've tested it. Well, let's put a hint more white, yellow, back to perhaps ochre. Okay, that's better. So I'm going to just place a little bit of that paint. Okay. I want to rub it in with my cloth. Okay, here we go. Just going to pick up a clean corner so it doesn't mix with anything we don't want to. And let's just rub things in. The layer becomes thinner with application of with a cloth than with a brush. And you can also change directions and kind of smudge borders. So this one could be quite nice as it is. Okay. Let's do a little bit more. No, what? I do need more lighter paint. I've run out it quite quickly. Okay, good. Let's keep that paint on the palette, not on the brush. Okay, alternatively I can wipe it on my cloth. And let's place that here. Okay, I wanted something a little paler still. Okay, here we go. Tiny bit more of that yellowish green. Okay, that's better. Right, here we go. Good. Let's put much more paler tones on this side. You don't have to use a cloth if you're starting and you're not too sure about it. Yeah, you're happy using your brushes, that's totally fine as well. Quite like using it as that initial blocking, and then I like more accurate smaller brush strokes to almost like finish sculpting the surfaces, but to apply it initially and allow transparency and allow the paint distribution in an exciting way. This is quite interesting. Might put a little bit of that green on top here as well. You can also, by placing your finger, making a lovely point or rounder shape or wider shape. You can create the different widths for the strokes. You can rub things in. Okay, and that will stay there. Okay, now this one might just have a nice connection. And anything here as well? Yes, a little bit. Perhaps some of the vegetation will start coming in over some of these rocks. So some of the shadows are not going to be as aggressive. Okay, I've lost some of my other rocks here, but there might be just a little suggestions. Good, good, good. Right, and the rock in the front, the plant at the front. Let's have more yellow on that. Okay, let's make it more yellowish green. And if I were to apply all big shape, it's partially covering here. That's what's good about it. If I were to press almost with my nail, I can semi-scratch the surface and see that orange a little bit more aggressively standing out than if I would have been just applying it with a brush. Okay, and also at this stage we want to use our palette knife or a little scratching tool, perhaps to get extra dynamics into this as well. From exposing some of the orange on our rocks, from reintroducing some of that color back into the landscape. Not a lot and not everywhere. Sometimes it could be very effective. It comes out much easier than with acrylics because it's very soft paint. Okay, good. Some lovely depth. Maybe a little bit less here. I need a tiny bit of lights on my greens, and then I'm ready to finish things off with the water. So I'm going to go for a smaller brush, and I need to top up my whites and yellow, and then I'll need quite a lot of white for the waterfall. So I have a clean brush for my fresher greens, so I can go more precisely for my white, my yellow, and there's probably enough green here on the palette already. Okay, a little bit runny, so I need a bit more thicker paint. I think it's quite an oily yellow. Okay, I need a thicker quality of paint because my initial application of green is already in place, and if I'll put it my next strokes too runny or kind of too soft, it just wouldn't sit there. So I wanted a little bit of paler greens somewhere here. Just a small quantity, just leading towards my waterfall. Quite like this orange stroke here. Okay, the orange stroke has gone. Okay, that shape is too similar. Can it lead to something else? Can there be more lighter green in the distance of that valley? Almost leading light. Yeah, it's taking us further into that space. So I'm putting thicker strokes, quite chunky paint. So I'm placing them there, and I'm also almost sculpting their direction, their step towards us to the front. Okay, maybe a little stopping point. Right, so these are quite chunky strokes. In some places I want to keep them as they are. In some places I might just gently soften their borders so they're not too uniformed. Like, it's easier to place them more solid contrast to begin with, yeah, and then we can always soften things we're not too sure about. I'm going to put a little bit of texture on this plant and next to some of my scratches. It will start being a little more varied here. Okay, that's good. Okay, that's okay. Right, then let's soften some of these borders of the strokes. So I'm wiping my brush. I'm just going to soften some of these. So if they're too sharp on both sides, fair enough. For example, on here we've got against the shadow, that will be a leading lovely light, but against the valley, they're too sharp. So they're bringing the light right to the foreground when they're a little bit more further in. So if we have a softer borders, they're less closer to us. Okay, that's good. Quite like some of the orange lines or little orange blocks here and there. I think this green was possibly somewhere here as well on the mountain, perhaps. That's just again a little optional thing. Okay, maybe that little extra light coming. All right. I'm ready for the water. I think I'm ready for the water. Right, what's this area? Sorry, tiny bit more of the green. So just looking at the whole orange, what's left. Is it all going to be green, or is anything need to be done to that? Okay, maybe something else could be part of the green as well, so it doesn't clash with too much of the orange. That's so good. Good. Right, clean brush. And perhaps a couple of brushes, a smaller one and slightly larger one. Okay, I think I'm gonna go for one of these splits. Okay, let's go for one of these. So I'm going to apply my white first, slightly diluted color, before I apply it thickly. So I more or less need to paint all my orange colors. That will also smudge with some of the areas of the shadows, which is fine. That's why we're doing the first run with slightly transparent color, and I'm going to have a hint of ultramarine in that. So the idea is just to have to cover the orange and establish some of the whites. Okay, maybe not fresh whites, but they're going to be established there. So let's paint by numbers and include them there. Although painting by numbers does not include wonderful strokes you can use and lovely marks, which you already can start introducing. Okay, so that might be coming in there. So I'm already interpreting some of the water. Okay, a bit more of a horizontal whites. Okay, the brush will start getting more and more darker paints. Will start picking up the background colors. So from time to time, I'll need to wipe it and reload with clean color. It's okay not to paint all the orange. We've got that lovely coppery sediment and coppery rocks in the water. So some of the orange will be fine to be left. I've done a stroke or two, and I'm coming back to my palette, squeezing the paint from the root of the brush and placing it on the tip of the brush. This is the only way I can actually paint without the muck getting on the way and without the brush filling up with unwanted darknesses. Okay. Almost there. All of this is going to be white. All this off-white color. So let's keep on going. I'm gonna have a tiny bit more ultramarine as my color is changing to more that violety, because that's what I was mixing for my darks. So when I'm painting the big shapes of water, I'm almost painting a shape and coloring it in. I've got horizontal lines for its tip, yeah, for the top of it, where the water has just started going over the rock. I'm finding the quite vertical, they're not perfectly vertical, there are all sorts of diagonals, but they're more straight strokes. Not wobbly, they're straight, they're falling water. And then at the base where it slants is more likely to have that vertical splash as well. Okay, what was this area? Okay. A bit of rock in the front. But that splash is still on the surface of the water. I think I'm adding some more water here. I think I might benefit from it here. It's okay. So I'm going with the shapes I've left by accidentally or deliberately. I'm working with these shapes, and if it's I decide to take some away, that's okay. Okay, so that's all good. You have that water coming in here. Right, so this one's landed, so I'm just going to check that every stroke which lands, it has a little white line under. It doesn't have to be a solid line, doesn't have to be a long line, doesn't have to be an equal line. Some places just a little reflection of that horizontal shape. And I'm going to connect some of these ones now to sub steps and connect them to that area, and then put a line over them. That's better. Okay. 1, 2, 3. Can I make these ones a bit more together so they're not too similar in width, and maybe another one somewhere here. Okay, that's better. This could have a little sharper border. Maybe another little streak coming out. That's good. Right, any other off-whites? What's happening here? Let's turn this one into a lighter shape. And perhaps now we've got on a smaller scale, let's see if something else will start just going over. Perhaps there, like a very shallow little waterfall. Good. I've got one line here became quite a solid one. I think I'm going to break it down with something pale in between as well. Good, good, good. Anything else in here? That water just going to carry on a little further out. Just on the border with the grasses. Again, just keep putting your thick white paint on the tip of your brush. And if it doesn't sit, it doesn't do what you want to do, scrape that surface with a palette knife or a wooden wedge. Or I know scraping it with a cloth is not quite practical because it's going to be too wide mark, but something like this you can lift off and have extra space created or tidied your strokes. Okay, and a little bit of that off-white is coming this way, so we're stretching now the water over. I'm going to look for some of the areas I have not painted. Those orange streaks are left deliberately for that water going over. Tiny bit more collecting as it's falling down from a small sub step. Okay. A little hint of that. I'm going for thick paint now, but it's not super fresh white. It's quite thick. I've got big chunks of it here on my brush. And I'm gently touching the surface just to skim it so it picks up in very small quantities. Okay, from time to time I'll be wiping my brush, which I've just done without thinking, which is just a good habit to clean the bristles. Okay, and any more of that directional water going over obstacles. And keep on wiping your brush. Okay, this is coming on nicely. You can also narrow some of these lines down by just wiping them off, just wiping what's around those areas. There's quite a lot of paint, so it will not be just a clean surface. Okay, anything else this way? Show that direction here as well. It is water. It's all coming that way. Just going to double check so they're not all the similar gaps. Okay, some of it's a bit more stronger, some a bit more softer. And then I'll start adding big chunks of white for the waterfall as a last touches. So brush will need to be white from time to time. Direct fresh white without any other color. Okay, and let's start with something wider just to practice it, and then we can apply those wider strokes within the off-white sections. Okay, go with the flow, see how it will vary. Okay, why is it stopped here? There might be a ledge. It doesn't go over it, or it's that going much more thinner. I think there's a little ledge in my case. We still need to show that flatter top and flatter base of the whites. So if your stroke's a little bit poking up, make sure you do turn it, kind of cut it off at the top. Okay. The tricky part is not to make these white shapes similar in size. So think of them as groups. This is a wide group. This is a taller one. And the white, fresh white, doesn't have to go everywhere. This one might just only have a tiny bit of that white. And let's drag some of this white. Okay, and see how it will just, what will stay there and what will not. Okay, good. Got lovely space between the different layers. This is a bit further away. I might have less fresh white for the strokes at the back. Maybe something here, maybe just a little corner, maybe just the top, maybe just a little dab, but maybe not as block and thick white. Okay, this is quite nice and juicy and quite wonderful to see how it spreads. Okay, this is lovely as well. Becomes much more three-dimensional. Right, any other fresh whites? Just a little bit sharper here. Now it's finally coming together. Right, any other fresh whites? Maybe just a little dab just to show that corner where that water is going. Finally, and it don't have to show where how it's seeps in between the rocks. Yeah, it's somewhere there, but we don't have to know all the details. Looking with the picture, by stepping away. Okay, any other fresh, if there are too many dabs of grays or less contrasts, can we come back to some of the areas and double check those chunks of paint reintroduced? Or okay, feels like I could do with a little small. That's it. A little something narrow. Drag. Okay, that's good. That's good, 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 good. Anything else? Right, I think my final little white stroke. I'm gonna take the water tiny bit further. It feels like I've got something else at the back. So I might have a little hint of something possibly coming down in the distance. Yeah, without extra rocks, but something there takes me. Right, just need a little darker blue mark again. I've taken a bit too much color. Okay, so now I just put a little sparkle in there. Again, this is just a little extra, something optional, a possibility of another rock coming in. And it feels I could do with a hint more darker dab here as well. Okay, that's lovely. The rest, if you wanted a tiny bit more details, you can play with them. But I think the less is more, and overtelling the volume of details could be sometimes too much. So tweaking little shapes of what we already have rather than introducing new ones will be best. Sometimes tweaking them by just lifting little corners and sharpening the silhouettes. This is what I'm doing here. Maybe subdividing the darkness so it's not too similar. Okay, maybe sharpening the straightness of the line. That sometimes could be a good one. Again, maybe subdividing this big shadow into sub-shadow that might be a little extra light of wet rock. So tweaks could be edited at any point, but I'm going to be stopping very shortly. Just checking anything else might need to be done. Right, I'm going to point over this rock. There's a lot of little things we have done, but hopefully we mainly looked at simplicity of shapes, and that's given you an idea of how to develop it after. Yeah, how do we come from simplified three darknesses, light, medium, and black? Yeah, and how do we translate it into our colors? Thank you very much for today. I hope you enjoyed having a little plan before doing a painting. I'm quite happy how the sharp, exciting waterfall is now sitting in this lovely, soft landscape. That focal point stayed exactly where I wanted to be. And from this very, very busy volume of details and nuances, we focused on where we wanted to be. Thank you very much for today, and I look forward to seeing your paintings.